Imagine you just hired, like, the smartest intern in human history.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And this intern has literally read every book, every article, and every piece of code ever written.
Sounds like a pretty solid hire so far.
Right. But there is a catch. You take this genius intern and you lock them in a windowless room. No internet connection, no phone, no access to your company's live database.
So they're just completely cut off.
Exactly. And then you just slip a piece of paper under the door and ask them to, I don't know, manage your entire global supply chain.
Well, that's just a recipe for an operational disaster. Or, at the very least, a recipe for a highly eloquent, beautifully formatted hallucination.
Yes, a perfectly formatted hallucination. And that is exactly why we're doing this deep dive today. We are looking at a massive stack of sources, including the 2026 Meta Intelligence Report, some deep technical papers on agentic RAG architectures, LangChain documentation, and tech symposium transcripts.
It's a heavy stack today.
It really is.
Yeah.
But our mission for you listening is to track this seismic shift in AI. We're moving from systems that just passively answer questions to systems that actively take action on your behalf.
Yeah, and by the end of this discussion, you're going to understand the underlying mechanics of this framework called agentic RAG. We'll break down how it's completely redefining the modern workflow, why standard models are, hitting a physical limit, and what this technological leap means for your career.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why is just using GPT not enough anymore? For the last few years, we've treated these standard large language models like they're the ultimate oracle.
They are incredible computational engines, absolutely, but fundamentally they operate as what the sources call a level 0 reasoning system.
Level 0.
Yeah. That genius intern in the windowless room perfectly describes a standard LLM. It has breathtaking internal logic, but it's trapped in a static box. Its knowledge is just frozen at the exact moment its training run finished.
So it wouldn't even know, like, who won the 2025 Oscars if it wasn't in its training data.
Exactly. It has zero awareness of current events, fluctuating market conditions, or, crucially, your proprietary internal company data.
But, I mean, can't we just keep feeding them more training data? Like, scrape the internet again every few months and train a bigger model.
You would think so, but that brute force approach is actually hitting a mathematical wall. The Epoch AI research in our stack is honestly startling. They track global data consumption, and they project that by 2028, humanity will have exhausted all high-quality text data.
All of it.
All of it. Every published book, every peer-reviewed paper, every vetted web page. We are hitting the data wall. We literally cannot just keep feeding the beast because we're running out of human words.
That is wild. And it's not just a data volume issue, right? The technical papers highlight a severe functional problem with standalone LLMs, too. Something called instruction neglect.
Yes, instruction neglect or contextual drift. When you stuff an LLM's context window with a massive enterprise prompt like asking it to analyze a quarterly report, extract specific KPIs, cross-reference last year's margins, and draft an email, the attention mechanism just breaks down.
It gets overwhelmed.
Right. It might write a syntactically flawless email, but completely hallucinate the financial extraction because it lost the mathematical context midway through.
So scaling up the model size isn't the silver bullet.
Yeah.
You can't just give the intern a bigger brain.
You have to give them a dynamic filing system. And that brings us to RAG, or Retrieval Augmented Generation.
Right. So how do we actually give the AI a memory?
Well, if the LLM is the reasoning brain, RAG acts as the dynamic external library. The sources use a great analogy for this mechanic's embeddings.
Oh, I read this part. It turns words into math, basically.
Precisely. Words are turned into vector coordinates. So, for example, the word cat might be located at the coordinates 2, 3 in this massive dimensional space. And the word kitten might be at 2.1, 3.1. So the system searches for semantic meaning, not just exact keyword matches. Instead of static knowledge, RAG intercepts your query, searches this vector database, and injects that specific context into the LLM before it answers.
So it's like a super librarian.
It is, but here's the critical vulnerability highlighted in the sources. RAG is heavily dependent on data quality. The real bottleneck is the chunking strategy.
Chunking, like how they cut up the documents.
Yeah. If you take a 500-page manual and arbitrarily chop it up into 1,000 token chunks, vector space might accidentally clump things together poorly.
So if a book in the library is misplaced or chunked poorly, it all falls apart. like mixing troubleshooting steps with standard installation guides.
Exactly. The retrieval system runs into the stacks, grabs a torn page that has half of a server reboot protocol and half of a fire alarm test, and just hands it to the LLM.
And the LLM confidently generates garbage because it's working with fractured context.
Right. Traditional RAG is completely passive. It finds information, but it doesn't think about what it found. It just assumes whatever it retrieved is gold.
Here is where it gets really interesting to me. Finding information isn't enough to actually complete a task. So how does the AI actually do things?
This is where we introduce the AI agent. This is a fundamental shift toward the REACT framework. Reason and act.
Reason and act, okay.
Unlike a static LLM, an agent operates differently. It can plan, it can break down tasks, and crucially, it uses external tools. It can trigger an API, use a calculator, or run a live web search.
The sources refer to this as the capable one does everything mentality, right?
Yes, an agent doesn't just give you a recipe. It checks your fridge's inventory API, orders the groceries, and schedules the delivery. It acts autonomously to achieve a goal.
So it's the doer. But if an agent is just out there acting without verified knowledge, it's just, moving fast and breaking things, I see where this is going.
I bet you do.
We have to combine them. Agentic RAG.
That is the key equation dominating the 2026 tech landscape. Agent plus RAG. To visualize it for you listening, RAG provides the knowledge, the library inside the brain.
And the agent provides the action, the hands that actually flip the pages and write the reports.
Exactly. One is responsible for knowing, the other for doing. But the real synergy is that the agent acts as a critical gatekeeper. It actively interrogates the quality of the data RAG retrieves instead of just passively accepting it.
So what does this all mean when you press enter? Walk us through the flow under the hood.
The sources break down a core 5-step agentic loop. First, get the mission to find the goal. Second, scan the scene to gather context. Third, think it through and devise a plan.
Which is the reasoning part.
Right. Fourth, take action, execute those tool calls. And fifth, learn and get better. Adapt based on the outcomes.
That lane chain documentation we looked at had a specific technical workflow that was just fascinating. LangGraph, I think it was called.
Yes, LangGraph. It details an internal node called the grader. In a standard setup, you ask a question, it searches and answers. But here, the agent receives a query and decides whether to use a retriever tool or answer directly.
Oh, yeah.
If it retrieves documents, it passes them to this grader. And if the grader finds the documents irrelevant, the agent doesn't just fail. It literally rewrites your question and tries again before generating an answer.
That is so incredibly human. I mean, think about it. You search a database, the results are terrible, you realize you asked the wrong question, so you rewrite your search terms. The AI is doing that internally without the user ever having to intervene.
And it does it in fractions of a second. This combination is dominating the landscape because of what the TechArcs paper calls System 1 versus System 2 cognitive theory.
Oh, like Daniel Kahneman stuff. So why is this specific architecture so unstoppable?
Well, traditional RA is System 1. It's fast, rigid, instinctive. Agentic RA is System 2. It's adaptive, deliberate, and self-correcting.
The sources had that great example, the Project Alpha budget scenario.
Yeah.
That really clarified it for me.
Yeah, let's look at that. Say you ask, what is the approved budget for Project Alpha? In your database, there is an old proposal saying the budget is 50,000 euros and a new signed report saying 65,000 euros.
A normal System 1 RAG might just grab the old proposal or mash them together and give you a fabricated average.
Exactly. But an agentic RAG pauses. It pulls both documents, analyzes the metadata, realizes the newer signed contract, supersedes the old proposal, reconciles the conflict, and gives you the accurate 65,000 euro figure.
It actively resolves contradictions.
Yes.
It's actually thinking.
Yes.
System 2 thinking.
Okay, so I want to know how this affects the real world right now for everyone listening.
Yeah.
Where is this actually being used?
Well, the reports state that 72% of global companies are using Gen AI in 2026. The practical applications are staggering. Take manufacturing, for example. They're using multimodal AI for visual quality inspection.
Multimodal meaning cameras and vision agents. Right. A vision agent spots a microscopic stress fracture on the assembly line, but it doesn't just turn on a red light. It communicates with a logistics agent, which checks the supplier database, realizes that supplier has a failure rate, halts the line, and orders replacement parts from a secondary vendor autonomously.
That is insane ROI. And healthcare was another massive one in the reports.
Oh, absolutely. The FDA approved over 100 AI and machine learning medical devices recently. It's shifting AI from just doing back-end paperwork to offering active clinical decision support,
But with medical data, there's so much conflicting information.
which is why the consensus protocol is so cool. Agents actively debate. A vitals agent monitoring ICU sensors flags a drop in blood pressure and suggests a medication. A different R agent flags that the patient's genetic history shows a high risk of adverse reactions to that specific drug.
So they argue about it.
Basically, an orchestrator agent synthesizes the conflict, checks live medical literature, and presents a dynamically adjusted treatment plan to the human doctor for final approval.
And that idea of agents debating is taken even further in science. The AI co-scientist paper.
My favorite application in the stack. Specialized agents collaborating to autonomously conduct scientific experiments.
Yeah, you have a literature reviewer agent finding a gap in physics research. It pitches a hypothesis to a PhD coder agent.
And the coder writes the simulation scripts, but before it runs, a peer reviewer agent actively tries to break the code and find flaws in the math.
They collaborate, run the simulation, and draft the paper. It's a digital lab.
Hmm.
Okay, this all sounds like literal magic, but what is the catch? Let's pump the brakes.
We definitely need to look at the system flaws. The sources call it the death valley of AI deployment. Only 12% of companies actually successfully scale these systems.
12% is a huge drop-off. Why is it failing?
Agentic ARGI introduces massive complexity. First, latency. Because the AI is thinking, invoking the grader, and looping multiple times, it's much slower than a normal LLM.
Right, because it's doing all that internal homework.
And with latency comes astronomical API costs. If the reasoning process is flawed, an agent can get stuck in an endless loop. Imagine an agent trying to book a corporate flight but getting confused by a CAPTCHA.
Oh, no.
It lacks a termination protocol, so it just pings the airline API 4,000 times a minute. You wake up to a $5,000 cloud computing bill for a flight that didn't even get booked.
That is a very expensive loop of useless tool calls.
Yeah.
And what about security? If they can use tools, they can delete things, right?
Severe data governance risks. When you give agents permissions to act, to send emails, transfer funds, a single hallucination or malicious prompt injection can cause catastrophic damage.
You're giving the genius intern the master keys to the building.
Exactly.
Okay, so shifting focus directly to the listener now, especially for those looking to pivot their careers or just survive this new landscape.
Yeah.
What is the core takeaway?
The fundamental nature of work is changing. The World Economic Forum predicts professional services will shift from hourly billing to outcome-based billing.
Because if an AI co-scientist can do a physics simulation in an hour, you can't bill the client for 3 weeks of labor.
Right. We are moving toward the agent-driven enterprise. And for you listening, your role is transitioning from a creator to an orchestrator.
An orchestrator, I like that word.
You are no longer the one writing every line of code or reading every single compliance document. Your job is to define the goal. You design the multi-agent crew like hiring a digital researcher or writer and a reviewer.
You prepare the context, set the guardrails, and validate the final execution. The human is basically the strategic director of a digital workforce.
Yes. You transition from playing the instrument to conducting the symphony.
That is such a powerful reframing. Okay, to briefly recap the journey we just took, we started with standard LLMs trapped in a box. Then I gave them a library. Then agents gave them hands to use tools. And agentic RE merged them into a system that can autonomously reason, self-correct, and act.
It really is a profound evolution. But I want to leave you with one final kind of mind-bending concept from the sources to chew on. We talked about the data wall, right? Humanity running out of high-quality text by 2028.
Yeah, that terrifying epoch AI projection.
Well, the solution the industry is using is synthetic data and the data flywheel. Because these agentic systems are now so good at researching and reasoning, they are being used to generate synthetic data to train the next generation of AI.
Wait, so the AI is writing the textbooks for future AI?
Exactly. Autonomous agents are researching, taking action, and generating the very data future models will learn from. So I ask you to ponder this. When AI is generating the fabric of its own knowledge, what becomes the true value of human insight?
Wow, that is a staggering thought. Going back to that genius intern we locked in the windowless room, we didn't just give them a library card. We gave them the keys, put them in charge, and now they are writing the training manual for every intern that comes after them.
A fundamentally different paradigm.
It truly is. Well, thank you for expertly breaking all this down today. And to you listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Your role as an orchestrator starts with understanding this stuff, and you're already a step ahead. Remember to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next deep dive. We'll see you next time.